accepted, approved. Next is the FY 2026 final HUD annual action plan, and I will turn it over to Caitlin.
Great. Well, thanks for everyone joining tonight and for approving the meeting minutes. For the last couple months, I'm going to stop sharing my screen really quickly so I can switch over to the next item. All right. Okay. So, quick refresher about sort of what the action plan is. The action plan is our annual, essentially our annual application to HUD and our strategic plan for a one-year strategic plan that we have to submit every year. It essentially details the activities that we'll be undertaking in the next year with our federal CDBG funds. We use our action plan planning process to dictate how we're going to spend the funding, the other funding that makes up the Community Development Fund, so the Community Services Block Grant, AHIF, and our TANF funding. And so every year we do this application process, we make recommendations, and those recommendations are then sort of folded into both the budget and our action plan. We reviewed the draft action plan in April. The draft action plan for some of our funding sources was based on actual funding allocations that we knew at the time. However, we didn't at that time know our CDBG allocation amount. And so we have since received our funding allocation for 2026. And so now we need to submit the final action plan to HUD. And so this is just an update about how we're proposing to adjust the spending amounts, and so that we can get this off to HUD and then get our money. So that's the background. So as you can see, the estimate is, as far as total funding, is a little bit more, and that's because our home allocation went up slightly. Our CDBG and our CDB went down, but very, very, very slightly. So we are, I think that's a good thing. I mean, it kind of makes the adjustments we have to make pretty minimal. And so this, just to, so everyone is aware that I don't know why, but my pie graph here is not showing the correct amount for CSBG. That amount did not change. It is still the 383,338 number. So I have to go back and fix that. And then the CDBG and home numbers include our estimated program income amounts for 2025, which were a lot lower than they normally are. As far as spending, we are required when we submit our plan to HUD to make sure everything balances out. So this is kind of what we're proposing. As far as the sort of big bucket areas, so admin and planning, community development fund grants, multifamily, and MyPAP. So as you can see, the grant amount, we are not proposing to change any of the grant amounts. We're not proposing to change the amount that we would like to allocate to the Moderate Income Purchase Assistance Program, which is our down payment and closing cost assistance program. The multifamily line item, that is the amount that we sort of set aside for multifamily housing, and it's the majority of our home funding goes into that bucket. And typically we kind of pool some money together, and then when we have a good project like Goodwill, which we heard a couple months ago, we allocate a lot of it to that project. And then the admin number is also adjusted, but again, very slightly. And so just as a reminder, this is where, the grant recommendations are, where the funding recommendations are going based on goal area of the consolidated plan. majority of it is going to goal 2. And again, this has not changed since the last time we spoke. So the next steps is, if you guys are okay with these funding adjustments, we would recommend approval. You would recommend approval to the county board, who's going to vote or who's going to review the final action plan at the July meeting. And then program funds will be available beginning in July. And it's allowable, and it's just because of the timing of the appropriations process this year. We were able to still get our contracts going and everything, even though we were really late and action plans due a little bit later than it normally is. So I do have another slide if anyone is sort of interested in where the changes are occurring. Again, CDBG entitlement went down very, very slightly. Our home entitlement went up a little bit, which is good. And as far as where everything is shaking out, we are reducing the amount of the housing outreach program just by a little bit, and that's just the amount that we allocate to the housing outreach program that our colleague Jorge Laura operates in the housing division. He does our outreach and fair housing workshops and cleanups and things like that. And that is because our CDBG entitlement went down a little bit, our public service cap has decreased just a little bit from what we were projecting, which means that we had to reduce a line item somewhere so that we're not overspending on public service, because we are not able to do that. And so this particular piece of Jorge's program is funded under the public service cap, and so we're just reducing that just slightly. And then the remainder is coming out of admin, although our home admin is going up a little bit too. So that is where everything shakes out. So with that, I don't have any other proposed changes. If anyone has any questions, I'm happy to answer them. Laura?
I just have a really quick question. I'm curious more than anything else. On the citizen summary where it outlines, like, by goal, the different programs and the funding amounts, it looks like the rebuilding together item is kind of split across 2 goals. And I was wondering like how you arrived at the split in terms of their expected outcomes of, it looks like 17 units rehabilitated, but like 2 versus 15. I don't know. It's really a tiny detail. I'm just curious.
Yeah. So and this is just the way that HUD kind of their program eligibility, or the funding eligibility works for different program types. So rebuilding together traditionally has been the home repair for sort of existing homeowners, right? So it's homeowner occupied rehab is what the HUD term is. Recently, they've expanded to start trying to do accessibility modifications at rental properties that are owned by, maybe like a mom and pop type landlord who maybe they have a tenant that needs like a wheelchair accessible ramp or something like that. And so that under HUD is technically rental housing rehab. So we're classifying it as 2 different things. And so they project to do about 2 units a year under that that category. And so that's why we've kind of split it out that way.
Cool, thanks. So it's like a change in the nature of the program itself and what they're doing, or addition.
Right. And so I just pulled up the what Laura is referring to. It's right here. Brian?
Yeah, for that, the fund for like accessibility, rehabilitation for rental units, is that administered through one of our community partners or through the county itself?
Yeah, so that's through Rebuilding Together, which is a nonprofit, and they serve Arlington. It's a national organization, but they have a chapter in Arlington, Fairfax, and Falls Church. And they, again, it was originally focused more on homeowner occupied rehab. Rehab for homeowner occupied housing. But they have since sort of started a pilot program where they are helping to rehab some rental properties. They did 2 last year. They're expecting to do 2 this year. Maybe at some point they'll, ramp that up a little bit, but that's kind of what their capacity is right now. They're a very small nonprofit.
Okay, excellent. Could you send me the contact information? I think that Disability Advisory Commission might love to learn more about what they do and how we can help.
Sure, yeah, I'm happy to. Anyone have any other questions? All right. I'll turn it back to you, Laura.
Yeah, so I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, that our action is whether we want to recommend approval of the action plan.
The final action plan. Yep.
Right.
2026.
So moved.
I saw you, Robert, but I didn't hear it.
Second.
There we go.
And Steve
we have it.
Rose it there.
Sounds good. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Okay, we as the committee recommend approval of the final action plan.
Great, thank you.
Thanks, everybody. And then next we are going to talk about, wow, the FY27 that looks weird on paper, right? The FY27 Community Development Fund NOFA and application. So I think probably Caitlin has some information prepared, but several of us have been talking a lot and doing some review of it and making some updates. We're excited to share with the group.
Yeah, thanks so much, Laura. Yeah, so I don't know if anyone, we talked a lot about sort of the process that we have sort of agreed upon for reviewing applications at last month's meeting. So if you were not at last month's meeting, I would definitely recommend going back and looking at either the meeting minutes or the recording of that, because there are a lot of changes being proposed. I'm going to summarize them really quickly tonight, but you'll get more of the context and the kind of the discussion behind it. But tonight we're going to talk about the actual application content and sort of what questions we're asking, what we're evaluating, and how we're going to do it. I will say that I kind of struggled with how to present this information because I didn't want to just like go through the NOFA line by line. I thought that would be really boring. So I tried to put it together a presentation that kind of broadly discusses how some of these things have changed. I would really recommend pulling up the application that we sent and looking at the application questions, the content of them. Like, you know, Steve likes to print things out. He has it in front of him. Just because you're not going to get the full sort of nature of what exactly we're asking through the presentation that I'm showing. But you will if you look at the actual question. So with that, I will quickly just kind of remind you why we're doing this. So earlier in this year, we talked about wanting to kind of review the way we are, how the Community Development Fund is structured and how we're sort of doing things, how we're recommending programs for funding. And the goal is really to create a sort of more equitable, inclusive process, promote healthier competition among our applicants, and just a better user experience overall. So the last few months, we've been looking at the application structure, our review process, our evaluation criteria, and the evaluation process, and really just sort of how we go about collecting applications, reviewing applications, making recommendations, and then sort of what we do afterwards. We're kind of doing this in two parts. We're looking at sort of the review process and content now. Eventually, we'll sort of get into more of the NOFA, sort of bigger picture NOFA structure, priorities of the program. And we wanted to kind of couple that with our consolidated plan process, which is going to kick off over the summer and into the fall. So the way that we've gotten here, we have been doing a lot of talking with different folks. I'm happy that my colleague Jennifer Sco is here tonight, who's sort of helped facilitate a lot of these conversations. And so I'm going to invite her to just jump on if she hears anything that I'm saying that, or someone has a question that I can't necessarily answer. But what we've done is we did an applicant survey earlier in the year in February through March. We got 36 responses. I went over the results of that survey at last month's meeting. So again, if you didn't hear that and you're interested, it's in that recording. I also sent the summary of the survey last month as well. So you feel free to review that. We also held some applicant focus groups with 15 different organizations, and really just to talk about their experience in applying to the Community Development Fund. What is it like accessing our application? Do you find it do you find it redundant? Do you feel like you understand how decisions are made? We got a lot of interesting feedback and some good suggestions for how we can possibly improve. We've also created a CDCAC task force. Some members have been helping us talk through some of the various elements of the review process and the application content. Jennifer, Steve, McCoy, Laura, Margaret, and Wendy. So thank you to them for their extra time that they have spent looking at all these things. And I think we've come up with a good recommendation for how to kind of move forward. So with that, I'm going to quickly just give an overview of kind of how the review process is changing this year for those who have participated in this before. So the first thing is that we will be instituting a pre-application, and I'm going to go into a little bit more detail about what's in that pre-application in a couple of slides, but it's going to be an opportunity for applicants to submit their interest for applying for the fund in mid-August. And it'll give us a sense of what applications to expect, but also an opportunity to evaluate applications for eligibility upfront, so that folks aren't filling out an entire application if their program really isn't a good fit for the funding. We're also going to be adding some additional technical assistance opportunities, and that's really both because there's a lot of new things that we're doing this year, so I want to make sure that our partners really understand what's being asked of them, but also to help with giving applicants a sense of what we're really looking for in the application. We're requiring participation in at least one technical assistance offering. So that's either our workshop or what we're calling office hours, which is essentially a time where folks can request 30 minutes with staff to go over their application and some of the questions that are in there. We're going to be starting a completeness check, which essentially is, after the full application is due, if there are applications that come in that are either incomplete or insufficient. And I think we're sort of defining insufficient as, the question, there are narratives that are duplicated throughout the application, or their budget isn't filled out correctly, or they're missing a document. They will have the opportunity to cure their application after the due date. We're also going to be creating a standard subject matter expert questionnaire, and this is just to standardize, what feedback subject matter experts are providing on each application. You'll be able to review that as you're reviewing the application. And sort of one of the biggest things is we're going to try this year is we're going to try no applicant presentations, and we're going to kind of move instead to a application discussion format. So we're still going to be meeting in the fall, and but it's not going to be with applicants. It's going to be small. It's going to be meetings with just CDCAC. And we're going to go through applications one by one and kind of talk about pros and cons, and let folks kind of figure out, ask questions, and discuss certain elements of proposals. And then finally, we are going to be translating application rank. So the dot night, the voting that we do at the end of our review process, where you rank applications based on category. Depending on where applications rank in that process, we'll be translating those into bonus points that will be added to the final score for applications. So does anyone have any questions about that before we get into application content?
I have none.
And feel free to jump
Caitlin?
in. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, Caitlin, it's Tim. I had a quick question about, first, let me just say, I mean, I think I've been involved with the committee for a long time, and the effort and diligence that you all put into after action reviews and process improvement, I think is laudable. I mean, it's impressive. So, you know, just want to say that. But has the other NOFA, the race NOFA, and any lessons learned from that process informed anything that we're doing, or have we traded and compared notes with them at all? That would be my question.
Yeah, no, we have, and both Jennifer and I, Jennifer Sko, who's on the line, she and I both participated as reviewers in the race NOFA, and both years that program was has been open, and we definitely have taken some of the you talked a lot with the administrator of that grant, and kind of taken some best practices that they've learned. We've kind of we're sort of, and Jennifer actually is managing her own grant, the digital equity grant process that the county is undertaking right now, and we're sort of all kind of trading best practices back and forth. So it's been nice. We've set up this grant collaborators group where it's myself, the race team, Jennifer, some of the grant programs from DHS. Kind of we talk every couple months just about some of the best practices that we have seen, and kind of pitfalls and things like that are germane to all of our programs. So yes, I will say that there are some things that we are doing, and I think one of the impetuses for doing away with the applicant presentations was because of the feedback we heard during our review process. But I will say that after speaking with the race NOFA staff person, who they did applicant presentations this year for the first time, and she kind of came away with a similar feedback on her experience in doing the applicant presentations, that she didn't feel like it added a lot of value, which is the same thing we heard from a lot of folks when we were doing our outreach. So I think it's something we're gonna try, and we're gonna see how it goes. But yeah, there's a lot of cross collaboration going on right now, so that's a good thing.
Great, thank you.
Right, I'm going to go to the next slide and just kind of talk about some of the proposed application changes. And so you can kind of see I have just a comparison of where we were in 26 and what we're proposing for 2027. So as far as the funding ranges, we are proposing to increase the funding range for the public service programs from 25 to 35K to 35 to 50K. And that's just sort of to fall in line with some of the feedback we were hearing about what can you really do with a $25,000 grant these days? Not a lot. And so we're trying to kind of increase the funding range there to kind of meet some of these nonprofits where they are. We're going to keep the top line amount for the housing and economic development at 100,000, and then increase the floor to 50,000 there. As far as eligibility, nothing has really changed, but I've just sort of given a little bit more detail in the eligibility section, and includes some general eligibility information about the program in general. And then it just expands some of the eligibility information for the various funding sources that we have, just to make it a little bit more clear about what we can and can't do with each of the funding sources. In general, as far as the number as far as the application questions, we're going from 19 questions down to 12. There's a lot of consolidation that's happening there. We're adding a pre-application. We are narrowing the word limits considerably to try to get some more succinct answers out of our applicants. And then we're adding some structured templates to the application as well, so that you're seeing some consistency in what you're reviewing. Okay, so as far as the pre-application, we are asking for just the basic contact information, you know, who's submitting the application, the organization. It'll include a short program synopsis. And then this is where organizations are going to give their high level sort of overview of their organization. So what's their history, their mission, who do they serve? And so we pulled that out of the full application to focus the applications in the full application, the organizational capacity question in the full application on really more organizational capacity as opposed to history of the organization. We moved the consolidated plan checklist to the pre-application as well, just to, because it kind of makes sense that you need to be able to meet one of these consolidated plan goals to be able to be eligible for funding. And then we'll be checking tax exempt status, articles of incorporation, debarment status, and state corporation registration at the time of the pre-application as well. Again, what we're reviewing during the pre-application is completeness and program eligibility. So as long as applicants can meet those two elements, then they will move on to the full application. Okay, so getting into the actual content of the application. So our needs section is changing slightly in that, you know, previously we kind of focused on broadly the community need, uniqueness of the program, and the community support behind the program. We're kind of moving to a scenario where we're talking a little bit more about demographics, local versus non-local clients, and more guidance on what types of data is, you know, would be valuable to review when looking at the community needs section. We're de-emphasizing program uniqueness, and there's no required narrative or prompt around that community support. It's sort of more of an optional thing that you can add at the end, and then we can talk a little bit more about that later. We felt there was a lot of discussion about what is helpful when you're reviewing community need. And I think what we're trying to do is not necessarily read a full needs assessment, but really get a sense of, you know, why is this issue important? How do you know it's important? And tell me some information to back up that why that need is important. So it can be local data that you've collected, or maybe it's a story about a client, or maybe it's some anecdotal experience that you have. We're trying to kind of get away from applicants just reciting census data and kind of moving into more of a personalized story about why the need is important. Does anyone from the review committee or the task force have anything they want to add there? Did I capture that correctly? Okay. And if anyone has any questions, please do jump in. I feel like I'm talking a lot. So moving on, as far as program design, we kind of asked for a program roadmap, and it was there was a sort of general narrative required for program synopsis. We're separating program design out into multiple elements. So there's going to be sort of an overview section that asks about sort of what activities will your grant be, will this grant be covering, how the program is actually going to address the community needs that were described previously. And this is the opportunity where folks can kind of talk about program partners if they will be using partners or other organizations to help with carrying out some of their activities. There's also an offer to, or there's a suggestion to also attach supplemental documents to help demonstrate what exactly you're going to be doing. So maybe it's like a training curriculum for a job training program in the optional community support section, which we'll talk about at the end. We're also pulling out some specific sections about target beneficiaries, geography, and work plan. Target beneficiaries is really going to focus on a more granular explanation of who the program is going to be serving and who's going to benefit from the program, how the program is going to outreach to that target audience, and really talk about how many of your program participants are actual Arlington residents. There's going to be another question about geography. So where exactly is the program taking place? Is it going to benefit a specific neighborhood, housing property, school, community center, something that kind of gives them an opportunity to say, we're going to be hyper focused on Buckingham or Green Valley or a school even within that one of those communities. We're also going to new this year we're going to be asking for a work plan, and this is just an opportunity for applicants to come up with a detailed implementation schedule for their program, where they can detail some activities and action steps. So you'll be able to sort of see from start to finish how exactly the program will be delivered during the program year. Does anyone have any questions about any of that?
I have none.
All right.
Sorry, should we be raising questions now, for example?
Yeah.
Or should we wait till later? So for example, I think I had raised with you my question about the geography one, about 250 words to say the name of the school you're at, or whatever. It would, to me, it seems like maybe it's a sentence or two. Maybe some program would require more, but I'm not sure I see the need for a 250 word geography if we can just fold that into program design or someplace else. So I just feel the need that people are going to write 250 words to say that they're focusing on Buckingham.
Does anyone have any thoughts about that?
I agree. A lot of times people trying to do an essay or something about the organization or the program. It doesn't take, you don't have to write a 2-page letter to describe it, just the minimum that you need to identify it with.
Yeah, I agree. Like you could give them the flexibility if they really feel like there's something special that they need to communicate about the location, but maybe, I don't know, drop it down to 150 words or something.
Yeah. Yes.
Okay.
I would just in the overview add identify the geography.
Okay. And we're going to reduce the word limit a little bit.
Yeah, and maybe Steve, along the lines of what you just said, like maybe use the word identify instead of describe. Describe feels like you're gonna have a lot to say.
Yeah.
Identify is a little more straightforward.
I would laugh, Caitlin, if someone gave you a meets and bounds description.
All right, anyone else on geography? All right, so I can make those changes. Anything else about what we talked about? Does that seem reasonable to folks? All right. So moving on. So previously, as I mentioned before, we had sort of had a pretty extensive organizational capacity and experience section. And it was kind of got into history, mission of the organization, general information about the capacity, and some questions about program specific experience. And so we're shifting the description of the organization generally to the pre-application as we discussed before. And the full application questions really are meant to focus on sort of the operational readiness and infrastructure of the organization, their specific capacity for implementing the proposed program. And this is where, they're going to talk about the staff, the team that they have put together to implement the program. If they are going to be working with partners, what those partners are actually going to be doing and sort of what their experience is. This is also an opportunity to sort of talk about why their organization is best suited to implement a project like this. It's a kind of a lot of text in the question, and there's a lot of sort of prompts in there, but I think it's just an opportunity to kind of really get a sense of why is this organization best suited for this particular program. We added a new question this year. Oh, go ahead, Steve.
It's sort of the same as before. In our past, when people had a partner organization, say like Path Forward, they would write about what is Path Forward and the history of Path Forward and the strengths of Path Forward. And since the vast majority of the partners, we know who they are, might it just be possible to identify them, say how they're going to be involved, and then if we get an odd one, like we're going to partner with Bob Inc., we could ask them about Bob Inc., but again, just to get rid of a lot of repetitive text, people telling us stuff that we already know. I was just wondering if we could do that, just identify who they are and what they're going to do. And if we don't know who they are, we could follow up with a question.
I'm okay with that. I mean, if others are agreeable, and I mean, we do ask for partner involvement in the program designs question. So we could remove the partner experience piece from the organizational capacity and then just include some guidance in the overview section to maybe include an MOU if they're working with partners, or some sort of, description of capacity from the partner organization. I don't know. What do others think? I want to make sure that it's not just me telling you what I want when I'm reviewing applications. What do you guys think? Go ahead, Wendy.
So, you know what you know, but not everybody knows what you know. So, I back to if somebody is new to the board, new to the county, new to the process, I think that information would be extremely valuable for someone. I mean, can you do it sort of like just sort of speed reading? And if you know the organization, you just go through it, but somebody who doesn't know would be able to spend more time and become more informed about organizations and services in the county.
I mean, I'm fine with that. What do others think? I'm okay with that.
I support that.
I support it.
Okay, so we'll leave the partner capacity stuff in there then. Okay, so we also added another question in there, just asking for organizations to demonstrate their what their administrative and financial capacity for administrating grant programs is. And this is really more about internal systems. Do they have the ability to track program costs, record keeping for the regarding their beneficiary data, what their client intake process. This information is very helpful for staff when we're evaluating applicants and organizations, because the funding that we administer is we have very specific data collection requirements that we have to report to our funders. So if organizations are not able to meet those requirements, then that can be an issue for us, because we need to be able to report that information at the end of the year. So this was sort of a way to kind of really get a better sense of those processes and systems during the application process. Does anyone have any questions about that? Okay. We can move on to the next section. So the next section is about evaluation. And so previously, we had kind of asked about, broadly about goals and outputs and outcomes. They were all kind of grouped together in a couple different questions. We didn't ask for, there was no guidance on the format or the structure or kind of what our expectations were around each of these areas. But we had also required a narrative on sort of the long-term vision of the program. So we're moving away from that model and trying to create a more kind of structured approach to getting the goals, outputs, and outcomes. So the questions, we're recommending bulleted lists. That's one of the areas, sort of recommending brevity for a lot of these things. Encouraging, some specificity in how outcomes and outputs will be measured. We're requesting the data collection methodology and frequency, and emphasizing, and it also reduces an emphasis on sort of the long-term vision of the program and sort of what the long-term goals are for the program. So it splits it out into goals, outputs, and outcomes. So the goals are sort of the overarching aims for the program. And we're asking again for no more than 5 goals for each application. The next goes into the outputs, and those are really the widgets, like how many people are you serving, meals delivered, things like that. We're asking for specific data and metrics and the methodology for how they're going to collect that information for the outputs. And then we're also asking about outcomes. So providing a bulleted list of, what are the direct results of the program activities? And these are generally the measurable achievements and direct results for the beneficiaries of the program. And again, within the outputs and outcomes discussion, we'll be asking them to provide the data and the methodology for how they're actually going to be collecting that data. So does anyone have any questions about evaluation, the evaluation section?
I apologize that I missed the last task force group because of a CSB conflict, but I've talked to you, Caitlin, a little bit about trying to get clearer in my head the difference between the goal and the outcome. So for example, in a goal, the example is reduced housing instability for residents, and the outcome is reduced housing insecurity. So if I'm trying to answer this, I'm not sure that the descriptions here make a strong distinction between the goal and the outcome. The output is easy. We're going to train 12 people, but we're going to train 12 people so that they do something. But what is the difference between what they do as a goal versus what they do as an outcome? And I'm just trying to think for the person filling out the form, how they'll come up with a list of up to 5 and how they'll differ?
Yeah, so I think I need to probably use some different examples because I do think that sometimes goals and outcomes can be the same or very similar. And so yes, that example would could probably confuse someone. So we can definitely change the examples there to make it a little bit more nuanced, I guess. But does anyone have any other feedback on that or questions?
I stand alone, and I'm okay there. I sense a consensus of which I am not part.
Uh,
Okay, I was just taking a quick note. Okay, yeah, so I can do that. And we can move on to the next section, moving right along. Okay, so we are previously the budget was added directly in Zoom grants. We did ask for a budget narrative. There was a separate narrative about what explaining why if you were requesting more money over the previous year, and then also about sort of sustainability. So we're kind of this year we are going to be starting I created a new budget template that applicants will be filling out, and is really to create some uniformity in what you're reviewing when you are looking at applications. So the new budget template will be uploaded by each applicant to the application. It includes some clear information about cost allowances for each budget area. So what type of sources you should be adding, and the various uses and allocable costs that applicants can apply to their budget. We're also de-emphasizing the sustainability question and the increased budget request question as well. I do have a screenshot in here of the budget template in case folks weren't able to look at it. And so it's similar to what we've used before. It breaks out personnel and non-personnel, and asks for the budget item description, and then each of the various sources that could support that line item. Does anyone have any questions on budget?
no.
All right. All right, so finally, as far as community support, previously we had asked for applicants to include 3 letters of support, and that was a scored element of the proposal. And so we're going to be moving to a broader definition of what these support materials can be. And so we included some examples in the application. So it could be photos, videos, marketing brochures, news articles, letters of support, statements of support from beneficiaries, program curriculums, annual reports. So really just a broad range of what applicants can attach to their application to demonstrate the strength of their program. It's going to be a non-scored element of the application. And the task force kind of felt like this was an opportunity to both broaden what we are, reviewing when reviewing applications, and kind of de-emphasizing the letters of support, which have kind of not always lended the most assistance in actually reviewing the applications and giving you a picture of what the program is actually going to be doing. So yeah, I think it'll be a good opportunity to get a feel for really what these programs are doing and who they're benefiting, and what to expect if it's funded. Does anyone have any questions, Laura?
Yeah, so correct me if what I say is not aligned with what we talked about, but I think based on our conversation in the smaller group meetings, it's not, this element is not so much not scored as kind of scored within the relevant criteria. So like, depending on what they submit, right? If they're submitting I don't know, some kind of data report that talks about data showing need, we kind of incorporate that into our evaluation of the community need criteria. Or if they're providing an MOU about a partner, we'd incorporate that into the relevant section when we evaluate that piece of the application. Is that correct?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's fair. What do others think?
I think, for example, like with the news articles, if you're talking about community need and there's an Arlington Now article saying there's a desperate need and you attach it, it gets scored in the community need as opposed to a separate item here. So I agree.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think it's just an opportunity for applicants to provide, some additional content that you can't really include. It doesn't really lend itself to the written section. Right.
I just wanted to say, I agree. I think we really saw it as an additional way to tell their story and how it supports their application to address one question or another, but it just gave people a little bit more leeway than just the written word.
Okay, so moving on to the evaluation criteria. Those are all the questions. So again, 12 questions, really trying to simplify, kind of, deduplicate some of the more duplicative questions that we had in the previous iteration of the application. So hopefully folks agree that this will get us there. And then we're also revising our evaluation criteria considerably, as you can see here. And one of the sort of main tenets of how we decided to move to this new format was trying to encourage CDCAC members and all reviewers to use the full range of available points when reviewing a particular category. And so the way we did that is reducing the number of points from 10 or even 15 per question down to 5. And then trying to provide a little bit more specificity as to what you should be looking for each of the questions. And so we're rating it on a sort of scale from 1 being like this is a poor answer to 5, an excellent answer. And so each of these questions will have a corresponding evaluation area. So community need. We talked about that first, the first question. The first evaluation area is community need, and it sort of gives a definition of what this is. Is the community need defined and documented? Is there supporting data? Is the general impact of population defined? And is there a clear link between need, data, examples, and impact of populations? And then if you go from 1 to 5, it'll tell you what you should be looking for when scoring the application. Some of these descriptions are, you're still going to have to use your judgment there. So like if, you're looking at number 2, if the answer has minimal or outdated data, vague or loosely connected answers to the target need as described to the target population, you're going to kind of have to use your judgment as to whether you think it sort of fits in that category. So some people say, yeah, I think that's a 2. And some may say, hey, I thought that was pretty good. But what we're really trying to do, again, is encourage folks to use a wider range of the points and kind of really create some more nuance in some of the scores that we get. I'm not going to go through each of these areas one by one, because again, I think that might be a little tedious. But does anyone have any questions about sort of the direction we're moving in here?
I have a comment on the community need when it's talk about supporting data. some of the churches, if the agency goes to the church and the church said they will be part of the help, whatever they can do, I guess that should add up points. So let me know if I'm wrong.
Yeah, I mean, I think, please correct me if I'm misunderstanding your question, but my thinking is that, you know, what we're really looking for in community need is either whether like local data examples or, like you said, sort of examples of you know, personal experiences or lived experiences of clients or parishioners of a church, or you know, examples that directly point to why an issue is persistent in the community. So I think you could use an example like that for sure.
Yes. Thank you.
I raised something, Caitlin, and we had a lot of discussion in the group about this, and I don't know how it ended up finally, but under community need, under excellent, compelling description of need, well-written response, strong local data and lived experience, demonstrated clear logical alignment between need, data, and population. The inclusion of well-written response, which might go to the expertise of the organization in writing grants. If it does everything else, compelling description of need, strong local data, you know, everything else, does well-written response, is that something to evaluate? And as I say, we discussed this at length, and I don't remember the end result.
I agree with that, Steve. That like that looks like the only place where we're really kind of assigning sort of a description of the response as opposed to the elements that are included in it. Yeah. So I would support just saying compelling description of need, strong local data, lived experience, etc.
Okay, I can take that language out.
We might want to translate that to the geography question as well, where we also say well-written description. We might say clear description of geographic area or something like that. Or that might change if we're changing the describe to identify. That might change it slightly here as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can look through and make sure that that's not part of the scoring criteria throughout. Any other thoughts?
I had suggested just under the leverage score, not going to tenths of a percentage.
Okay.
20 to 39.9%, just like 20 to 30, or just drop the tenths of percent. It's sort of like overkill, I think.
Caitlin, did you all do that for the race grants? And was there a reason behind that, or
for the leverage score, or what for what?
Yeah.
No,
I mean, carrying them out to a decimal point. I just don't know.
No, I mean, that's just left over from our previous application. I can remove the tenths of a point. I mean, it's percentage point.
Not exactly a massive improvement, but
yeah, I mean, that's fine. I can do that.
I was going to say or suggest you could always just label it like quintile, because that's what you're doing, like first quintile, second quintile.
A good idea.
That's a very good idea.
Okay, so as you can see, the total possible score for the each application is going to drop down to 60. And so these are the sort of possible scores for each area: 25 possible points for community needs and program design, 10 points for organizational capacity and experience, 15 for program evaluation, 5 for budget, and 5 for leverage score. When I was kind of pulling this all together, it kind of felt like that was a good number for each of these categories. So I didn't apply any weights or anything. But I was curious what everyone else thought, if maybe we wanted to add a weight to one of these areas, or if we felt that some areas needed higher possible points or anything like that. What do you guys think about that?
Or does it seem
as is? Okay, I kind of felt like that too. I kind of felt like this seemed like the right mix.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Okay, I'm going to bring this up just because you guys know this is what I do. But why would we? Why are you laughing, Margaret?
Because we
why
missed
wouldn't we
you
just...
the other day.
I told my husband, I said, they're going to be so happy I couldn't make it. But why wouldn't we just weight them the same? Why is one more important than another?
Well, it's the total possible points for each area. So max 10, max 15, max 25. So yeah, I mean, I think that's just how it shakes out. But if we need to add weights to kind of bump up, like maybe budget, I think we could do that. I don't know. What do others think there?
I think there's a distinction. I don't know what's there looks good to me, but I don't know what the proper distinction is. But I think, say, community need and program design should be weighted more than budget, because the community need and program is more significant. If the budget is a little bit iffy, it's iffy. But if the community need is iffy, it's a non-starter.
I agree. I mean, you guys know I'm crazy about the budgets, but I mean, I'm just thinking, right? Program evaluation is actually really important because we need them to really think about how this is going to be evaluated and incentivize them also to collect the demographic data that we so desperately need. Is organizational capacity and experience less important than the community need? I don't know. I'm just throwing the question out there.
I would say yes, because I take more of a risk on them failing. I'd rather risk that than on, again, the community need, I think, is the number one thing. If there's no community need, everything else is useless. But I don't feel strongly. But I think you could have more risk with the ones that are valued less.
I guess what I'm thinking, Steve, is community need and program design may be strong, but if you don't have the organizational capacity to carry it out, why are we giving them money? And we're only saying that your experience and ability to carry this out is worth, less than half of the community need part. That's all I'll say, but I'm just asking.
Legitimate question.
I guess I'm thinking of it a little bit like it's a little bit semantics, like it's a little bit artificial because we're grouping community need and program design into a single category. But if we broke it, like you break it out and it's, I don't know what it is. It's, 15 points for 15 for community need and 10 for program design or whatever it is. Like it's still the same total number of points. We're just kind of adding headers, in between, right? We're just kind of breaking it out. So it's kind of like, how are we choosing to group the questions, the 12 questions? But what I'm seeing is still 5-point max for each of the 12 questions, regardless of what category they fit into. And we've sort of determined, or we think that those 12 questions are the right questions to get a picture of what this program is.
Right. So if you wanted to pull out like community need and I don't know, say like target beneficiaries and make that its own category and weight it higher, that would increase the possible scores for that element, so the community need element. But then we'd kind of have to figure out how we would want to weight some of the other areas. But I guess what I was saying was that I kind of felt like this was the right mix when I was kind of pulling it together. But yeah, I very much value everyone here's input. So I'm happy to change it if others feel strongly.
My thought is simply, it looks like community need and program design is sort of almost, more evidently weighted, like it's much more, the difference between a 25-point grouping and a 5-point grouping is kind of pretty stark, but that might simply be because it's a bigger category with more questions. And so I think that this is the right, I don't know that I don't think that there should be any weighting necessarily, but I'm open. That's all.
All right, well, I'm not hearing anything, so I'm thinking maybe we leave it. Can try it this year and see if we like it. And then if we feel like it doesn't, accurately, reflect what people feel, people feel applications should be scored, maybe we can revisit it in future years. So this is just a quick reminder of what the application schedule is going to be. We don't have to go through it in detail, but and this will be in the NOFA. It's in the NOFA that draft that I had sent prior to today's call. We're planning to release the NOFA in July. The review schedule, so our application discussion sessions, I'm hoping to get that to you sometime in August or September once we have an idea of how many applications we should be expecting and what the what types of applications will be coming in. I also think it would probably make sense to set up a reviewer demo with everyone because I've mentioned this before. We're going to be moving to a new application software for 2027. It's going to be brand new for both applicants and reviewers. So we're kind of working out the kinks right now in the application and should have something to share. It'll be ready by the time the application is released in July, of course. But what do you guys think as far as a reviewer demo? We have a meeting scheduled in July. We typically cancel that meeting because we don't necessarily have business to attend to in July. So we could do it then. It might be kind of too far removed from when we're actually reviewing applications in September. So if we want to maybe push it to a later month, maybe August, September. I don't know that we'll have time to do it in September because September is usually a pretty busy month. But what do you guys think? Do you think that would be helpful to do that? Brian?
Just say as the newbie on the committee, I would prefer a training and then also to have it in August, as I'll be out of the country for 3 weeks in July.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So preference for August, maybe even push it to September if that we can figure out a date that works for everyone.
it might be helpful if we already have the applications, because they presumably will be presented to us in a different way than what we've seen before. So if right when we get the applications, we then have the demo, we could use one as an example of how to step through and what we're going to see.
Okay. So that's going to require a one-off meeting. So as long as everyone's okay with that, I'm okay with it too. But just keep that in mind. So I'm thinking maybe we do that sometime in late September, early October. And I can get that on the calendar. I can start looking around to see what would work best for everyone. Wendy?
Caitlin, are you doing any training with the applicants as well?
Yes. Yeah. So we're going to be doing a demo for the applicants at our workshop in July, end of July. So folks are welcome to attend that if you're interested. I often send that information out to the group. So you're welcome to attend that.
So when you're walking them through it, do you do a dummy application that's in the program for them?
Yes. So it'll be the Neighborly staff doing the demo, and so they'll walk through creating an account, setting up the application, filling out the application. What are the required elements? Here's how you download. Here's how you upload. Like, it's going to go through everything. Saving the application for later, like adding collaborators, like all of the things that applicants are going to need to know. And then we'll record it and it'll be on our website as well.
Okay.
Jennifer, there's one other issue I raised with you. If I don't know when to raise it, but I was recommending that just before the application is released, that we double check with the county attorney's office, because as you know, when it says demographic information required by funding agencies, the executive orders and so forth not only do not require it, they prohibit it, and they're also now requiring people getting contracts to affirmatively state that they do not have DEI programs. So I think this could like hit the fan in some way. So it would be good to just check in on what's the latest from HUD or whoever.
Yeah, we can do that. And go ahead, Jennifer.
Hi, thanks for raising that, Steve. We are tracking this very carefully. We're involved with a bunch of advocacy groups that are, we were talking with jurisdictions around the country about sort of how they're handling this. Even with our contracts this year, we haven't gotten specific guidance from HUD. What we tried to do is, like in our action plan and our consolidated plan that we're kicking off, we're trying to take out trigger words. So, like our immigration legal services programs and our action plan, we're putting them as legal services programs. So I think we're trying to be careful about that, but until we get specific guidance from HUD, we really can't tell anybody what to do. And on the data side, similarly, we've been hearing conflicting things from other jurisdictions that have also submitted plans and contracts saying, we have to certify that we're going to not discriminate against people, but we also have to certify that we're not collecting race and ethnicity data. So I think this is all going to sort of play out, but we really don't have clear guidance at this point. But thank you for bringing that up. We are definitely paying attention to that.
Yeah, there's a lot of conflicting stuff on that because it's also statutorily required. So I don't know. But yeah, no, we're paying very close attention to that right now. Any other comments or questions or feedback? How are people feeling? Are we okay with these proposed changes?
I'm okay.
Good.
Yeah, I mean, Caitlin, I'll offer. I think that clearly the group thought this through. I mean, I've always been of the mind that we do a pretty good job. But, as I said earlier, the diligence and dedication to process improvement, continuous improvements, I think it's fantastic. And the changes that you guys have outlined here are, they make sense to me, and I think they respond to and reflect the new environment that we find ourselves in. So, yeah, sounds great to me. Thanks.
Thanks, Tim.
I was going to say, this is Chris. How is everyone? I was going to say I like it because I know we talked about a little bit last year separating funding, right? And I think we saw that in this proposal where there was funding specific for housing needs and other things. And I'm really thankful. Thank you all for listening and making those changes. I think that's really cool and really important.
Great. Thanks, Chris. All right. Any other feedback, questions, comments, concerns?
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, and thank you guys for the task force members who have been meeting with Jennifer and I and helping us come up with these recommendations. And Jennifer Sco, thank you so much for helping to facilitate all these conversations. I really appreciate it. She's been awesome. So I owe her lunch or something. So yeah, I guess we can move on to staff report. I don't really have anything. This is what I've been working on the last month. So, and sort of the transition to Neighborly. Jennifer, did you have a staff report?
Well, I was going to say you have something exciting happening with the home stuff.
Oh yeah, I can report on that. So we had participated. So the Arlington is a member of an association called the National Association for County, Community, and Economic Development. And it's a NACED for short, and it's basically a association for community development individuals or sort of, yeah, from across the country that work on HUD, CDBG, and home programs. And Jennifer and I are both involved. Jennifer's on the board and I'm involved in in the housing committee. And we had responded to a call from Representatives Flood and Cleaver on home and CDBG reauthorization language. We had written a letter and we were invited to come and speak with Representatives Flood and Cleaver next Monday to talk about the home program and sort of how it benefits local communities. So I'm going to be representing Arlington at that meeting, and I'm excited about that because it's there's a lot going on with both of those programs. They were both zeroed out in the president's budget, so we're really trying to advocate hard for that not to happen. So hopefully this will be a way to add to that effort.
That's awesome.
Yeah, NACED is actually putting together a bunch of advocacy efforts coming forward. If you're tracking the budget at all, you know it's with the Senate now. So there's going to be many meetings set up with the appropriations committees on both sides. So we may actually hit up some of you all to join us. We're able to come as practitioners, but it's often really helpful to have community members or beneficiaries. So if you're interested, let us know. These are all going to be moving pretty quickly, but I think this is going to be an important time to advocate for these programs.
Definitely.
And CSBG was also zeroed out. So all three of our grant programs that we administer have been recommended for elimination. But the good news is this has happened before, and they're all very community-based programs. A lot of mayors and elected officials really feel strongly because they know these programs really have a positive impact on their community. So we're hopeful, but stay tuned.
Anything else to report on the staff side, Jennifer? I'm going to take that as a no. Any member reports? Great. And I guess, Laura, that would leave you a chair report.
Nothing for me.
I think the only thing that we typically do at the June meeting is to talk about whether we're going to meet in July.
So it sounds like with little interest for the demo in July, and I'm looking at the calendar. Yeah, the meeting would be July 2nd. Is that right? And that week is the week of the 4th.
Yeah,
I know I'll be away.
that's a tough week for a lot of people.
Yeah.
Yep.
So I think we would need a motion to cancel the July meeting if we were to do that.
So moved.
Second.
Anyone
Second
opposed to
the
canceling
motion.
in July? All right. Sounds like we
Great.
canceled July. Do we meet August or?
No, so August
Okay.
is generally already not scheduled.
Gotcha.
So we will be reconvening in September then.
Okay. Wow, it's
Great.
June. Have a wonderful summer, everybody.
Yes.
Yeah,
Have a wonderful summer.
Bye-bye.
All right. Have a good one, guys. We'll see
Thank
you in
you all.
September.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you. Bye.
Have a good one. Bye.
All right.